out here with me this morning, and it's actually going on lunchtime. It's about 11:30, and you can see the garden. It's nice and wet from last night's rain. Here's the 3 rows we got set up so far. I actually need 5 more bales to finish this, and the truth of the matter is, the reason I'm 5 short is for twofold. Number one, I decided to make it bigger after I got started, and number two, the debit card machine was down at the place where I buy the bales of hay, and I only had so much cash in my pocket. Didn't feel like riding to town to go to an ATM. So when I'm over that way tomorrow, Monday, and I'm going to drive that way anyway, I'll swing by the bank and pick up a little more cash in case their debit machine's still down, and I'll get 5 more bales. But basically, we're going to get out here and check out what we did yesterday here in just a minute. But you can see that the rain, we got just under an inch of rain, and you can see that at that inch of rain we got a really nice drenching here. It knocked down all that loose dirt, and where we planted all this rye seed, you can't hardly even see the rye seed now. That the soil was already a little bit loose from where I had plowed it. Putting that rye on top, the rain just beat it right down into the dirt. So this is going to sprout in a few days, and by next weekend, the top of this garden are already starting to be looking green, and within 2 or 3 weeks, it'll just be a big green carpet. But you can see that the water started washing our fertilizer down to the bales. We're going to do our second day of conditioning on these bales, and we're also going to be putting in our T-posts and our wires to get set up for the growing season. I'm going to grab some supplies and get that together, and we'll be back in just a second. Okay, here we are. We're back at the straw bale gardening site in the front of the garden next to the strawberry patch. And as I said, economics being what they were with the cash in my pocket, I still need to get 5 bales to finish this out, so that we'll have sections of 3 bales each, which is equivalent to a 10-foot long 2x4. And I'll explain why that's important in a little while. I put fertilizer on top of these bales yesterday. It rained just near an inch of rain to water that in. Now today, I'm going to continue the conditioning process. And I'm going to show you what I've got together here. I've got my hose with my water wand hooked to one of the spigots that run down the side of my garden. I have stanchions running all the way down the side of this garden. About every 10 feet or so there's a water spigot, and there's another one up at the front corner, so that we can water our drip tapes and so forth in the summer months. But to do the project today, I have potash, which is nothing more than the ashes from my fireplace. This will add important nutrients that we need to the bale, along with the composting process. We have my little, hard to see here in the shadow, but we've got my little pitchfork here. This is going to help us to aerate the bale a little bit, to open it up so that these nutrients that we're putting in can work their way down in the center of the bale to kickstart the microbe colonies growing like crazy, to start heating up the interior of that bale to make fresh composted material for our plants to grow in. I have a T-post driver. This is a big, heavy steel device. I'll set it up here. And it is quite heavy. It has 2 handles on it, and there's a spring inside of it to help me drive these T-posts into the ground. We also have a scoop that we can use in our potash. We have 2 bottles of organic fertilizer. This is fish fertilizer. It's a fish emulsion. What it is from up in Alaska. You can see it right there. It says Alaska. They grind up the heads and tails and leftover pieces of the fish after they process the caught fish, and it goes into this fish emulsion, which we're going to add to put nitrogen and other nutrients and vitamins and minerals into our compost for our vegetable plants to use. I have a watering can here that we're going to use for the fish emulsion. As a side note, this is my father-in-law's watering can. We use this in memory of him. This is the one he always used. My wife inherited it, and we've used it ever since. It reminds us of Gus. Got a big plastic pail. Can't have enough plastic pails around if you're a gardener. And then we have these T-posts. You can see them here. I've got some real tall ones. These are right at 6 feet tall. Let me get one. I've got some shorter ones and some taller. This one here is a 6-footer. You can see it there. It runs all the way down here. And you'll know a T-post because it's shaped like a T. Makes a T. You see it's got a spine running down the length of it. And it's got two wings, which is the face of it. And the face of it has these little knobs. You can see them here. And that helps us to tie things to it, and they won't slide down the post because they're stuck on those little knobs. You can see them running down better in the sunlight there. Okay, so this is a T-post, and this one here is a little bit taller than I am. This one's a little over 6 foot tall. And I'm going to show you why these are important with our straw bale gardening here. And first what we're going to do is we're going to mix up some of our fish emulsion in the bucket so that we can use this old watering can, this old galvanized watering can, to water that fish emulsion in. We're going to use our pick here to aerate the bales a little bit, to open them up just a little bit so that we can work this potash and this fish emulsion into them. Then we're going to drive our T-post in every third bale at the either end of the row, and then every third bale. And we'll show you why that's important also. So we're going to get started on that. Okay, I've gone and got some more bales of hay. You can see them stacked up there on the truck. And we're going to duplicate 2 more of these square planters that you see here. And now that nice shiny area I was working in earlier is in shade. That's fine. It's not going to be a problem. We're going to put 2 more of these out here so that we've got these square planters that I was telling you about. And you see how I've overlapped them here. This bale is right here. The other one is butted right up against it. And then you see this bale here is overlapping the end. And then you get down here and that bale is butted up to the end of this one. So they're all overlapping, and this one is overlapped. So they make a little daisy chain of overlapping to where you get a square in the center. And again, I've taken a bale that I busted open and crammed it about a little over half full with hay. I took the hay, broke it off in chunks about this, and turned it over and laid it flat down in there. It left me a little area here and here, and I just grabbed hay in bunches and crammed it down in here really, really tight, because you don't want this to sink down much. You want it all compost together, because this empty area here, which is about 8 or 9 inches high there, we're going to fill this in with either compost from our compost bin, or you can go to the garden shop and buy pre-composted manure or garden soil or potting soil or planting soil. They sell bags of just about all of those things there, whatever you can purchase. Miracle Grow planting soil works really great. And you can fill this up, and then we're also going to put a 1-inch layer around the top, 1 to 2 inch layer across the top of this, but not yet. Right now, all we're going to do is set them up. We got to set up one more here and another one there. Then we're going to fill in between with hay so that all the walkways are matted down with hay so we don't have to weed during the summer. We're going to take our pitchfork and poke in the top to aerate them a little bit. We're going to sprinkle fertilizer around the top, and then we're going to water it in. And then these are going to go through a 12 to 15 day process of every other day you're going to water, and the next day you're going to fertilize, the next day you're going to water, the next day you're going to fertilize. You want to use a high nitrogen fertilizer, whether you use organic or whether you use chemical fertilizers. You want to be sure and use something that's got plenty of nitrogen in it, because that's going to get the little microbes that are living on and in this hay active. The water and the nitrogen and the fertilizers are going to work together to get them to come alive and start eating and converting the starches and nutrients that are in this grass in the center of these bales. And once they begin cooking, they're going to raise in temperature. Now I'm going to catch my breath here a little bit if I'm breathing heavy. I got all of these bales into the garden, and they're all set up in a straight row, 3 in a row, and I've even taken the trouble to put these T-posts every third bale, 1 at each end, and then 1 every third bale. We're going to put a 2x4 stringer between the tops of these, and then we're going to use electrical fence wiring, or baling wire as some people might call it, between these T's, and I'll tell you what that's about a little later. But right now, the first order of business, the bales are in the garden. The very first thing we need to do is put some fertilizer on them. I recommend using either a cheap lawn fertilizer, which is really high in nitrogen. Make absolutely sure it has no weed killers or herbicides in it. Fertilizer only. If you're going to use lawn fertilizer, it's usually pretty cheap. I like to buy this 10-10-10 from my farm supply, They sell it in two forms, a standard 10-10-10, which is quick release, and also a 10-10-10 gold, which is a slow release type material. I always have the 10-10-10 slow release because I use it for a number of things around the yard and the garden, or as I like to call them, like Jerry Baker, the famous gardener Jerry Baker used to say, the yarden. I kind of put the two words together. But this is 10, high in nitrogen. That's what we want. That'll wake up the microbes and bacteria that's in this hay on these grasses down deep in the heart of the bale, and they'll start multiplying, creating heat, which will do two things. That'll sterilize the bale for us, get rid of the microbes, bacteria we don't want, and it'll also sterilize the bale from any seeds that are in there. The heat will burn those seeds up. It'll literally cook the inside of this bale, and those microbes will convert this grass to a usable substance that our plants and our seeds will truly love. Now, what I recommend is get you a cup or something to spread with, and what you want to do is if you're going to use a measuring cup, that's fine. I just generally eyeball. You want to use about a cup and a half on the first application. You're going to sprinkle this liberally right across the center of the top of the bale, and then you're going to come back with your garden hose and you're going to water it in. And the main thing you want to make sure you do is put the water hose, whether you're using a hose with no end on it or you're using a sprayer or a wand or whatever, you want to put the water right against the bale. It'll perk straight down through this bale and come out the bottom. Now you can see I've got my fork here, and I pushed it about 3/4 of the way down into the bale. I move it around a little bit, and then I pull it back out, and I shove it down in there again. Now some of these bales are a little more tightly packed than others. I did two things when I bought these bales. I asked him to pick out the ones that were the most tightly packed, and I also asked him to pick out the oldest bales, the ones that would have been in the barn for 2 years or more, because most of the cattle feed, animal feed nutrient value is gone. They have almost no green in them. They're all brown. So they use this mostly for bedding. It's not silage for feed because, again, they've been in the barn for over a year, most of them 2 years old. You can get these bales around $3 to $3.50 a piece. Every now and then you can find some real old ones for $2.50 to $2.75 a piece. But I'm just going along and I'm aerating them, just doing this. And the only reason I'm doing this is to just open up some little channels in this hay. Now see, this one's a real dense one. And I'm just opening up some channels so that when I water these in a minute and put the fish emulsion on them, that fish emulsion will have some channels and fertilizer from yesterday to start working its way down into the center of that bale so it can start the composting process. So we'll have good nutrient-dense soil, composted material in the hearts of these bales to feed our plants. The great thing about this is that as you do this, you don't want to compost the outside of the bale. You're only wanting to compost the interior of the bale so that the bales maintain most of their structural integrity through the season. Eventually, they're going to compost down and start to sink. And you may even have some problems where we'll have to later this summer stake them up on the sides where one or two of them might try to fall over to one side or the other. But we'll deal with that. That's easy enough to deal with. All right, I'm going to turn this off and get back to jamming this pitchfork in the rest of these bales, and then we'll move to the next process. Okay, I got all of that done. I'm all hot and sweaty now from pitchforking my hay bales to aerate them a little bit so that the nutrients I'm about to apply and the water can perk down into the center of the bale and get those microbes growing and cooking to compost these bales so that we'll have great interior compost material for our plant roots to grow in. I've got a bucket, a little old galvanized farm bucket, full of just plain old ashes from my fireplace. Now you wonder what that's for. Well, fireplace ashes are great for your garden and your yard. My pecan trees love potash because potash is high in calcium. About 70% of this ash is actually calcium, 70% by volume. There's also a large amount of phosphorus and potassium in here, and there's a whole lot of other trace minerals and elements in here that are good to foster root growth and plant vigor and vitality. My pecan trees love this stuff. It causes them to grow sturdier, stronger branches and produce more and better tasting pecans. What we're going to do here to add this great level of potassium and phosphorus and calcium and trace minerals to our composted hay bales, we're literally just going to scoop it out and we're going to sprinkle it right on top of the bales here. And you can see it's a little bit of a breezy day. I'm just going to sprinkle it in like that. You can see the coating right there. Just a nice dusting, and I'm going to work my way down these bales. And that's what I'm going to do now. So I'm going to go ahead and finish this, and we'll be back with the next step in just a moment. Now I've got 3 rows, 3 30-foot rows, 9 bales per row, and the square setups I've made. It's going to take me a little while to water all these, so I'm not going to keep you going. I'm going to log off here and get all of these watered in. Again, the main thing is to water them until you see the water pouring out of the bottom of the bale all along the length of the bale. Do that for each bale. This first time will take a while to get them all watered in. On subsequent waterings, the every other day waterings we do, it'll take very little water to saturate the bale and see it run out the bottom because they'll already be saturated. We'll just be topping them off. The idea today is you want the water to percolate all the way through the center of the bale and come out the bottom so that we can kickstart our microbes in here and start building a population of microbes that are going to start converting the interior of this bale into nutrient-rich compost for our plants. And it's going to make heat, which is going to be possible for us to tint these bales and plant several weeks early without worrying about light to medium frost, because the bales are going to be like little heaters that are going to protect our plants for us. So I'm going to get going on this, and we'll be right back with the next segment. Okay, our fish emulsion is all mixed up, nice and foamy on top. Ew, and it smells very very fishy. What can I tell you? It's kind of rotted up fish. They take the fish heads and the fish tails and the scales and the bones and all the junk that comes from fish processing way up in Alaska, and they grind it up to make a big, thick, brownish sewage looking like sauce, and then they compost it to sterilize it. They bottle it up in these bottles and sell it, and it's great stuff. If you're trying to organic garden, this is really good stuff. Not only is this good to condition your soil or your bales, if you're planting in the garden, I use it in there too, as well as in these bales. But during the summer months, when you want to fertilize your plants through your drip irrigation, your soaker hose or drip tape, these liquid fertilizers work really well. They go right through the soaker hoses and into the ground at the plant, and or drip tapes like I use. So this is great stuff. I'm going to use it to kickstart the microbial action in the centers of these bales to get them cooking, so they'll compost down and be ready to plant. And real quick, I've been mixing this stuff up and pouring it. I'm down to a little less than half a bucket. When this bucket is full to the top, it's hard to pour into my watering can over there. And so what I do is I use this bucket to pour into this bucket. Then I carry this bucket over here to the garden. And I use that galvanized bucket because it's more manageable to pour the fertilizer into this number 8 watering can. We use this number 8 watering can every year in memory of my father-in-law, Gus. He grew a beautiful garden, very productive up in Atlanta where he lived for many, many years, and this was his favorite watering can. He used it for a long, long time. You see it's an old number 8 galvanized standard watering can, and we put a little plastic shower nozzle on the end of it there so we can sprinkle the stuff out. Works really good for putting the liquid fish fertilizer or nitrogen or anything else, organic liquid fertilizers you want to put on the bales for conditioning. And every year we do this in remembrance of Gus. My wife inherited this after he passed away several years back, and it's been a standard tradition in our garden every year, and I can't use it without thinking of Gus, and that's why we use it. And so I'm going to finish putting the rest of the conditioning nitrogen charged fish emulsion in here, and that's going to end what we need to do to these bales for now. We're going to continue to condition every other day. Tomorrow I'll water. The day after that I'll add again a fertilizer, organic or whatever. The day after that I'll water, and we'll keep doing this on through the rest of this week. By next weekend we'll be on our 14th day, and these bales will be ready. Now in the next installment I'm going to show you how we put the braces, the stringers between the tops of these posts to keep them from pulling inward against each other as we run baling wire or electric fence wire between the two posts, because we're going to use this to, and along with the baling wires that are on the sides of these bales, or strings actually, and we're going to use this to create a tent out of plastic sheeting to capture the heat so that we can plant our seeds and seedlings 2 to 3 weeks earlier than we might otherwise dare do, for fear of a medium to hard frost killing them. But by tenting these and capturing the heat that's coming up from the bales, because remember I showed you they're 115 degrees inside, they're going to get a little hotter before they start to cool down at the end of next week, and we're going to harness that heat to be able to plant earlier and get our vegetables harvested that much quicker. It's going to give us a big jump start on the season. Also, the wires that we run back here, after we take the plastic off, once it gets warm enough and all danger of frost is gone, we'll pull the plastic sheeting out, roll it up, fold it up for next year, and the wires will remain because they will become a climbing trellis for beans and peas, and you can tie up your tomatoes on them, all those types of things. So they serve multiple purposes. We love things that are multitaskers in the garden. Do it once and use it for multiple purposes. So I'm going to get to finishing up our conditioning in here, and then that's going to be it. I'm going to continue to do that off camera for the next 3 or 4 days, and then we'll pick up next weekend where we put our wires and stringers on here and start setting this up to get our seedlings in here the 1st of February and our seeds. All right, there it is. I've got my fish emulsion here, and like I said, it's a pretty fishy smelling brew. And I'm just going to pour it like this and work it into these bales. I'm going to take that 1 7 or 8 gallon plastic bucket I've got, and I'm just going to work it on down. And I'm not really running the full top of this bale. I'm running it pretty much right down the middle. I want this to perk down to the interior of the bale. And actually, my soaking process with the water works so well that I really don't think that I'm going to need to water this back in afterwards. I think that this is going to do enough on its own. You can see it just coming out of there like a shower head. And that's going to be enough. That's going to perk right down into the center. And boy, those microbes that are in that grass and that bale are going to start having a party, man. There's a party going on in there right now. And they're going to start multiplying and getting hot and breaking the interior of that bale down into some nutritious stuff that our plants are going to love growing in. Now, I want to say one other thing about the hay bale gardening. You're going to read a lot online, and if you take any books out of the library, they caution you against using grass hay. Most of them tell you to use straw. And the reason they tell you to use straw is because straw is the stem from the wheat or whatever other tall type grass that they use, where they harvested the head and there's no seeds in the bale to germinate. It's just the stalks of the plant. The problem we have here in southeast Georgia is it is not a heavy wheat producing area. Very few of the farmers around here ever grow any wheat, winter or otherwise, and as a result of that, about the only hay you can get in this area, or the only bale of any kind, is either going to be bahia grass, which is what these are. Sometimes you'll see some oat hay. Now, I wouldn't recommend the oat hay because it is slap full of seeds. I have used oat hay to bed down between my rows like you see here, so that weeds can't grow up, and as long as you mat it down good and tight, it won't matter about the oat seeds in there. They really don't germinate. I've done that several years, never had a problem, and you can get the oat hay pretty cheap. What I recommend is, if the only thing available to you, like in my area, is this bahia grass hay, go to your hay supplier and tell them that you want to buy the oldest hay he has. You want to buy what they call bedding hay. This is hay that has no nutritional value anymore because it's not green. If you look real close here, there's no green in this. This is a brown bale. It's brown all the way through. All of the green is gone out of it. They can't use it for feed. It's not considered feed grade anymore. And these bales are a lot easier to deal with too, because they're a lot lighter, because they have very little moisture in them. They've dried out from sitting in the barn for 2 to 3 years. I always ask them to take me to the oldest hay they've got. That also tends to be the cheapest hay that they have. The hay is normally around $275 to $350 a bale, and if you get the feed hay, it's going to run up in the $4 range and plus. I've seen it as high as $5. You don't want the green hay because it will have some active seeds that may sprout, and normally that's going to be along the edges and the side where you're going to see that. And you can actually take a vinegar and water solution and a little sponge mop and rub it on those sprouting grasses that come out the sides of the bale. Don't get it on your vegetable plants. And the vinegar is enough to burn those little grasses as they sprout and kill them, and you can clean your bales up that way. But I've done this several years with this Bahia grass, and again, if I buy bales that are 2 to 3 years old, good dry old bales, they'll compost down internally, and you really won't see much sprouting of any grass seed coming out of the sides or the tops of the bales. I've seen literally none. As a matter of fact, while we're on the subject, those bales right there, let me get over here where you can see them on the end of my driveway, a little turnaround here. I've got some old bales right here. And these bales have been sitting here baking in the sun and the humidity all summer long. They've been rained on and rained on and rained on. These were 3 or 4 year old bales last year, and they were extra bales that I ended up not using in the garden. I got them as spares in case I needed them for something. You'll see nothing has sprouted on these bales. Nothing. There's no grass, there's no weeds, there's no nothing. They've just been sitting here, and literally I haven't done anything to them. If you start pulling them apart, you can see the strings are loose on them. They've already started to compost down. If you open them up, see how they've composted inside. They're already wet, and they're already rotting and turning into nice rich brown soil just sitting there. And I'm actually going to take these and use these to fill in the centers of my square bales, and I'm going to use them for some other compost bins that I have to make more compost for the garden. So nothing goes to waste. And again, don't be afraid to use grass hay bales if that's all you have in your area. Just be sure and ask them for the stuff that's 2 or 3 seasons old. They're lighter, easier to deal with, and you won't have to worry about anything sprouting out of them except your beautiful vegetables.